when I think of true equity, one that there's more representation, and not in a tokenized sense, that we're not looking at, okay, let's throw some Black people in this picture so we can look like, we're doing the inclusive thing. No, but that it being the norm that you have Black and brown people that are centered in this yoga space, and more access and opportunities for Black and brown people to have ownership in this world, in this yoga world. So owning studios and being able to lead out in certain, initiatives within the yoga community. So us no longer being the exception or being tokenized, but it just being normal to have this diversity.
This week on the I Choose How podcast, that's for us too, with LMHC and registered yoga teacher, Tamara Nelson. Welcome back to 52 Choices, where each week we explore one small doable action that can make a big difference in your health and happiness over time. This is choice number 5. Eat slowly and without distractions. Now let's be honest, eating has become background noise. It's something we do while watching a show, checking email, or scrolling through social media. But here's the problem. When we eat distracted and fast, we override our body's natural signals of hunger and fullness. We finish meals feeling unsatisfied or overly full, and often we don't even remember what we ate. But don't just take my word for it. Science backs this up. In a 2014 study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, researchers found that participants who ate more slowly consumed fewer calories and reported feeling fuller compared to those who ate quickly. Even more interesting, the slower eaters didn't feel deprived. They felt more dissatisfied mentally and physically. And another study from 2010, published in Appetite, showed that when people ate while distracted, like watching TV, they consumed significantly more calories and remembered less about what they had eaten. That lack of awareness can lead to more snacking later on, even if they weren't truly hungry. Here's what that means for you. Eating slowly and without distractions can actually help you regulate your appetite, improve digestion, and support weight management. Without restriction, without counting, and without stress. So, here's your challenge this week. No phone, no laptop, no TV. Just you and your meal. Take a few deep breaths before your first bite. Notice the flavors, chew slowly. Put your fork down between bites. Let your body catch up with your brain. You don't need to do this for every meal. Start with just one per day. Build the habit from there. Because eating mindfully isn't about eating perfectly. It's about building a better relationship with food and with yourself. That's choice number 5. Eat slowly, be present, and trust that your body knows what it needs if you give it the space to speak. See you next week for choice number 6. All right, guys, welcome back to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Leslie. I'm really thrilled to be with our guest today. It's a conversation I've been really looking forward to having. And just like her podcast says, which is Honest Conversations, this is another honest conversation that we need to have. And I'm really looking forward to you all being benefited from it. So I want to really jump right into it. And I want to introduce our guest today, Tamara Nelson. And, she is a yoga practitioner. She is a LMHC. She is a registered, should I call it yoga teacher? Is that correct? Right. And in addition to that, she's also a Black woman in America. And, there's just so many things that's connected to that. And so, we want to have that conversation today, interconnected both race, religion, the practice of yoga. So, ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, please welcome Tamara Nelson to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here and to discuss this topic.
Man, I'm really excited to have you here. And so, I want to get right into it, and I want to take us back for you Can you tell us your first memory of encountering yoga and how it made you feel?
Yeah. So the first time I ever went to a yoga class was when I was in graduate school. This was around probably 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. And so a classmate of mine invited me to come with her to a yoga class that was being held on campus. So I was like, yeah, sure. Prior to that, I never had really considered going to yoga or anything. So when I went with her, well, for one, we were like the only two Black girls in the class. And it wasn't a good experience. Like, I felt out of place the whole time. I felt super conscious of like my movements, and like I felt like I had to be like perfect at every pose. It just wasn't enjoyable. And I think the worst part of it was just feeling so out of place, like feeling like the oddball in the room. And I never went back to a yoga class for like several years after that. But the good thing that came out of it was I decided I'm going to do my own practice. Like, I like the idea, the practice of yoga. I just didn't like the space that I was in. And then I just got motivated to I'm just do it on my own. And I like taught myself. And I did that for years. And that eventually led to me becoming, certified as a yoga teacher.
And dig a little bit deeper into that as to why you felt out of place, especially with that first yoga class. What about that class made you feel so out of place?
Yeah, I mean, mostly it was just not seeing anyone else besides my friend that looked like me. It was a room full of white people. And not to say that I always feel out of place in a room full of white people. There's a certain like energy that comes with it too. Like, when you feel welcomed in a space, and sometimes it's hard to like put your finger onto why specifically you don't feel welcomed. It was just an energy that I felt, just kind of like, are you in the right place? Like, sure y'all supposed to be in this class? Like, it's almost like that feeling. Not that anybody like said that, but it's an energy that I felt. I just didn't feel like a welcomed participant in that class.
And, I want to share two experiences in terms of my experience with yoga. So, Tamara and I share a very similar religious background. And so when I was in high school in Brooklyn, I remember our PE teacher trying to introduce yoga. And so everything in my being, everything in my background was just like resistant to it. I was like, look, I'm not taking this yoga class. It's very much against my religious perspective and background. Not doing it. And, that particular teacher, he didn't really want to like pretty much acquiesce to what it was I wanted to do. And so did he give me an opportunity to do another project? Yes. Right. But, I kind of, he wasn't happy about the fact that I was kind of giving him this extra trouble.
Yeah.
Right. So fast forward a couple of years, I'm now working in the fitness space, and a lot of the mobility movements that I do with my clients, they overlap with a lot of, the yoga movements, and a lot of yoga poses as well. And so I've been working as a trainer for 5 years now, and I've noticed that if I have Black clients and I have white clients, let's say I ask my white client to do a child's pose with no problem, they already know what it is.
Yeah.
If I ask them to do maybe thread a needle, they know what it is. Or, downward dog, they know what it is.
Yeah.
And I would say without fail, at least 80% of the time, maybe 85% of the time, when I would ask my Black clients to do that, and I asked them if they were familiar with that movement or if they knew that movement, they would oftentimes say no.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if there's just a cultural thing that we're not familiar with yoga or yoga movements, or it has more to do with access,
Right.
that we're not familiar with those movements. So kind of talk to the perspective or the aspect of access and how that plays into why many of our people are not familiar or aware of yoga.
Right. And I think my own experience is a testament to that, because I have been involved in dance and sports all my life. So I've been in the fitness, wellness space for a long time. And I never once considered going to, it wasn't even a thought to go to a yoga class. And, looking back, it's because of the lack of representation in yoga. I never saw Black yoga teachers. I never had friends or people who looked like me or people in my community, never heard about them going to yoga classes. So it wasn't a thing in my mind to do. So, and I would imagine that maybe that's the experience of a lot of other people in our community. So when you don't see representation of you in certain spaces, subconsciously sends a message that this is not for you. And even when my friend in grad school invited me to that yoga class, my first thought was like, oh, that's for white people, and that's because of how it's advertised in the Western world. If you're not a skinny, white, young woman, it's not for you. This is not your space. So, and then yeah, go ahead. I can.
No, I mean it really is that. Like, that's typically when I think yoga, I think yoga mat, yoga pants, right, and some skinny white woman, right. Like, that's usually like my those are the first three images that pop up in my head when I think about yoga. Now, I don't want to attack any white yoga practitioners out there, right? But it's like, I don't think it should be the first thing that comes to my mind, especially since yoga didn't even originate within European or predominantly white countries, right?
Exactly.
As far as I know, historically, yoga originated within the Indian regions, where within those Indian countries, like India, Pakistan, like those regions where the practice of yoga started.
And let me also add that there has been some research showing that also in Africa, there is some roots of yoga that also started there as well. And that's kind of been somewhat of a debate of like, whoa, where did it start? But I think in general, we know that yoga started with Black and brown people. Who was first, whatever. I'm not interested in arguing that. But yes, with the South Asian community, and then also some origins of yoga in Africa, more specifically Egypt, which is Kemetic yoga.
Yeah. With that said, because I know that the yoga industry in the U.S. often centers whiteness, and I wonder how has that affected the visibility and comfort of Black practitioners and teachers, right? The gym that I work at, we have group fitness trainers, and typically I think I've seen, and this is not me putting down my gym, but typically I've seen a lot of the yoga practitioners within our gym, they're typically white. Yeah. And then oftentimes, we'll have one or two Indian people with Indian background who are also teaching the class. But kind of talk about how that makes Black practitioners and teachers, how it makes them feel seen or comfortable in that space. And kind of also speak to, have you seen or have any understanding or knowledge of the difficulty of Black yoga practitioners actually finding work in this space?
Yeah. So with, whiteness being centered in, Western yoga, one, it in terms of being like a yoga teacher, and again, this is coming from like my personal experience, despite practicing yoga for years. So like when I got on my whole, like teach myself, and I really got into it and it became like a core part of my wellness, And people, like, I can't even tell you how many people would ask me, like, because I would post videos on my social media of my, practices or doing certain poses, and people just assumed that I was a yoga teacher. Or they would be like, well, why aren't you teaching? Or where are you teaching? And then I would be like, oh, no, I don't teach yoga. Like, the thought was almost like silly to me that I could be a yoga teacher. And that shows the level of, lack of representation in the Black yoga teacher space, or in the yoga teacher space. So to answer your question, that with whiteness being centered, it almost makes you feel like if you're anything other than that you can't even be in this space. You can't lead in this space. You can't be a teacher. And it took a very long time for me to get to a place where I was like, yeah, actually, I'm going to do this. And the breaking point for me was that so many people had asked me, and then it was just that final person that was like, why aren't you teaching? And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of people asking me that. I'm just going to do it. And then, from there, I had to build my confidence as a Black person in this space. So that's one. So not having, examples, not maybe having access. Yes, there are Black yoga teachers out there, but there's not a lot in, concentrated spaces. So you may not see that. And then therefore you don't have the seed or this idea that is something that you can do. And then when it comes to studios, like trying to find, jobs as a yoga teacher, most of these studios are white owned, or predominant, most of the teachers may be white. So a Black yoga teacher may not feel comfortable trying to get a job in these spaces, or they know that they're going to be subject to, certain things that we tend to experience in all white spaces, whether we're talking about work or, being a yoga teacher or whatever. So if you don't feel like you have a sense of community, or that you're going to be accepted or respected or taken seriously, then you may be discouraged to go for those roles, or maybe you may not get those roles because you don't fit the bill, or you dang, I lost the thought. I had this third thing and then the thought just went out. It'll come back to me. But I wanted to even share an example so the yoga teacher training that I did was led by a Black woman. And by the way, this is the first and only Black woman that I have found that actually does the certification. So that's a whole nother tier. We got Black yoga teacher. Then we have Black studio owners. Then we have Black yoga teachers who actually can give you the certification, because you have to have certain level of training to do that. All are, we need more at all levels. She shared an experience with us that, she owns a studio, and she had these repeated experiences where people would come to, a class or whatever she was doing, and they didn't know who owned it. They didn't have this picture of who was the owner. And, people would ask her, they would come and have this look on this face, you're the owner, you're the teacher. And so they would question her being almost in disbelief that she could be the owner of this. And that actually pushed her to start to, advertise with her face on things, because she's like, I want you to know what you're walking into, so I don't have to keep dealing with this. So I share that example to show what we have to go through in this society as a Black yoga teacher. And I think you also, when going back to access, also thinking about where are yoga studios typically located. They're usually in affluent neighborhoods. If you go in the hood, you're not going to find a yoga studio. So that also limits people's exposure and access to yoga practice.
I think what you shared, sorry guys. All right, there we go. We got a light back. I think what you shared exposes something about the imaging of what is expected of Black people in America, right? Because, as you talked about, yoga places or yoga studios being in certain particular neighborhoods. And you're located in Orlando, Florida, correct? I'm here in Brooklyn, New York. And it's the consistency of where these places are placed, right? Right. If you come into Brooklyn, and you're from Brooklyn as well, right? Mm-hmm. You come into Brooklyn, you're going to typically find yoga studios downtown Brooklyn, right? Maybe somewhere in Prospect Heights.
Right.
You're probably not going to find it. I don't think I've found a yoga studio in Brownsville. I don't think you're going to find one in certain areas of Bushwick. And I'm not talking about gentrified Bushwick. All right. I'm talking about the rough and rugged Bushwick of the past, because we know what gentrification has been doing to those areas. But like, that's something that, I consistently see, and how it exposes what white America expects of us. Right. And so, we're talking now about yoga, but we see how that imaging affects every other space as well, right? Yeah. And that this like imposter syndrome that we have, right? Everyone sees me now as a personal trainer. A lot of people have no idea that my major in college was history, and I double majored as a history major and a religion major.
Okay.
Now, what happened? Well, one, poor planning. Two, the other thing was imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? Because my particular area of study was the history of science, particularly within Western Europe, and looking at the development of science and how that played a role in, the discoveries that we have today, but then also the religious interconnectivity of that experience when it comes to science. And so I didn't think that I could really see myself in that area, because when it came to that, there wasn't a lot of Black. I don't even really know any Black individuals that are within that, that space when it comes to history of science.
Right.
And so I didn't think like that could be me.
Right.
And even though I had aspirations to do it, and I still do plan to do it, I think I still have time. But, and so, yeah. So, with that said, have you seen yoga evolve in Black communities in the last decade? And if so, what has changed and what is still missing?
Yeah. So, yes, especially now being a yoga teacher, I'm more in the community. So I'm more aware of like what's happening. And yes, we have some amazing Black yoga teachers here in Florida, different parts of Florida, that are doing some amazing things. First name that comes to mind is Black Yogis of South Florida. Yes, I believe that's their name on Instagram, Black Yogis of South Florida. And I follow them. I've done a collaborative post with them before. And they are hosting some amazing events down in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, South Florida area, centered on, Black and brown people. And so there's a lot of that's happening around, where a lot of us have had this collective experience of, being othered or not feeling welcome in certain spaces, and saying like, hey, let's do something about it. And so, so I would say that's kind of where the progression is coming in. The things that are missing, I would say we need more Black owned spaces, Black owned yoga studios. I don't know of any Black owned yoga studios. They may be out there and I'm just not aware. But that's one thing. I would say we also need more Black yoga YTT providers, yoga teacher training providers. So, because for me, that was so important, was to find someone who looked like me that I can learn from. Because if I go to these traditional, westernized, white-centered instructors, I'm going to feel the same way that I felt in these classes. And I want someone who understands the culture, that understands me, that I can relate to, and I want to learn from them. So I think that's important too. And the accessibility. getting a certification as a yoga teacher is very expensive. It costs thousands of dollars. And, I was lucky enough to find an opportunity where it was offered at a very affordable price. And it had to do with the pandemic because I got certified in 2020. And there was someone who decided like, hey, our people are suffering right now. And this is when there was a lot of, George Floyd was murdered and we were just going through a lot of pain at that time. And so somebody decided that they wanted to offer the certification training to the community so that we can get more people out there that can help our people like heal. So I think if we have more of that to create more accessibility for yoga teachers, that's needed as well. But I would say like we're out there. I've gone to like different workshops and trainings that are focused on Black yoga teachers and being able to, hear from others who've had very similar experiences to mine. Like we're aware and we're like actively trying to do something about it.
Man, what you just said about access, especially in relation to the cost of certifications.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm gonna say this right now. The fitness industry, especially in regards to certifications like NASM and ISSA, and I got to be careful the waters I'm treading here, but it's a major scam.
Yeah,
it's a major scam, right? The amount of money that a lot of these certifications are requiring for us to pay, and then the way that the job structure is set up within gyms, is crazy. It's crazy to me, and I might get in trouble for this, but I guess I'll risk it. It's crazy to me that 95% of gyms are hiring trainers on a session basis, and they're not respecting them in their profession to hire them full time. Okay, so how many times have you met personal trainers or yoga practitioners who are doing 2, 3, and 4 other jobs, right? Doing gigs, right? And so it's like, and I literally don't know any, maybe personal trainers who have their own businesses doing really well.
Yeah.
I don't know any personal trainers that don't have just one job.
Right.
So, I don't know. Maybe I'll leave it in. I don't know. I'm gonna get in trouble for that. Maybe, right? But we'll see.
True.
It's a conversation that needs to be had because it's like the amount of money that people spend and then the recertification fees, right? I even did the math. I'm like, okay, I don't know how many trainers there are in America, but like NASM has a recertification fee of $100, right? If we get just 10,000 or 100,000 people to recertify every 2 years, that's $1 million every 2 years just from recertifications, let alone the new certifications they keep coming up with. Right? NASM, please do not attack me. All right. So, right. And I want to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to shift gears by prefacing it with this question. Right. So I already spoke to my experience and how my religious paradigm, and similarly your religious paradigm, kind of led me to stay away from yoga. Right. Is it okay for us to practice yoga but not necessarily accept some of the spiritual components of it, right? And I mean, and I've taken a yoga class before. I don't think that there's a sense of like a religious infusion of principles within a yoga class. But is it okay for us to really try to seek the physical benefits from yoga and not really try to like focus on the spiritual aspect of it? Because I know this is where a lot of us are afraid of it. And then a lot of us, in terms of our people, are afraid of interacting that when it feels like it goes against our religious experience. Right.
So first, I think we need to make the distinction between like yoga in itself and an actual like religion. So like yoga in of itself is not a religion. It's, although it has been used in different religious faiths, and has, roots in that the practice itself is not a religious practice. So you can practice yoga and not have to conform to any particular, religious faith. There's people who do Christian yoga. They, incorporate yoga and they modify it to Christian beliefs or traditions.
That's new to me, by the way. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. And then there's just like regular secular yoga. That's not, it's not involving any type of religious overtones or anything like that. And it's just focused on the pure practice of, mind-body connection, breath, meditation, mindfulness. And these basic components of yoga are very much aligned with a lot of different religious faiths, including Christianity. I really recommend people that maybe have some of these hesitations to actually research, do some research on yoga, on the pillars of yoga, the philosophy of it. Because when I did my own, study, going through my own yoga teacher training, because granted, coming from a religious background, I walked in with, some of those misconceptions because, you hear certain things going in church. And doing my own reading and understanding, I was like, wow, a lot of this is very much aligned with Christianity and with other religions and just being a good person in the world, So none of this is like bad, evil stuff. This is stuff that we should want to be aligned.
Yeah. And kind of tell us where that stigma came from, because I know that within, our particular religious background, there are things that are shared that, reveal that stigma. But as to where that really originated, I'm not even clear as to where that originated.
Well, I think in general, I don't know like specifically where it originated, but what I think from my experience growing up in religion is that a lot of times we fear what we don't understand. And so when I think just based off my experience in the SDA faith, Christian faith, there's a lot of demonizing of religions outside of the faith and without anyone actually like trying to understand or research other religions. And I think if we did actually do our research, we would understand that we probably have more in common with other religions than we, differ. And so overall, and I think that's just human nature. We fear what we don't understand. So if I don't understand this thing, they doing some weird chanting, I don't know what that's about, it must be of the devil. Let's just stay away from it. And then that's it. Nobody fact checks, nobody does any research, and then we just keep spreading. Then the message just continues through generations. So that's my theory on what happened there.
It's so funny because it just reminded me of a statement from there's this book, Christ After Lessons, and she said something along the lines of where our aim is to be finding the things that are in common with other people and not the things that we find wrong about them, right? And so it's just interesting how we find these things that are wrong about individuals pretty much without any basis or claims for it,
right?
And then we set up this wall, and sometimes it may be a psychological wall that we set up, but we set up this wall and we don't learn anything and we're not able to share anything. There's not that like confluence of ideas that occurs, and so we're no better for it. And so this, I think, as a community, as a people, this is how we're going to grow, right? We're going to grow through that experience, these shared experiences, and sharing things with each other.
Right.
So I want to kind of continue to move on here, and I want to know what it looks like when Black communities reclaim yoga on their own terms, right? When we're able to redeem it, right? Like we found a way, and some people, some older Black folks may feel a way about this, and maybe I feel a way about this, but we found a way to redeem the N-word, right? We found a way to also redeem the image of the cross. If you have understanding of the history of the cross, you asked someone as a Roman, like what the cross meant. It was a very offensive thing. But somehow within Christian circles, we were able to redeem the image of the cross. So talk about what it looks like when Black communities reclaim yoga on their own terms.
Yeah. So I'm going to use myself as an example. The way in which I have reclaimed yoga, Yes, I'm going to say reclaimed, because I think this is a very ancient practice that our ancestors have. Like I was saying, there's also, research that has shown that there's roots of yoga in African lineage as well as, South Asian. But the way in which I have reclaimed yoga is as a yoga teacher, making it my mission to use yoga as a tool to help my community. That doesn't mean that I don't welcome white people in my class or anything like that, but I'm not centering my class on whiteness. I'm centering my class on my culture, my community. So what that looks like can be the music that I play in yoga classes. I play music that we connect to, neo soul, R&B. I include reggae, and I also incorporate like self-reflection exercises in my yoga classes and meditations, and I make sure that those are also centered on my culture, my people. So themes of empowerment, of rest, emphasizing why we need to prioritize rest and recovery, and things that are specific to the challenges that we face in this society. And then I think some other ways that what that can look like, you see other like trap yoga, not personally my thing, but there are yoga teachers out there that teach those type of classes. And again, that's making it about the culture. There's a community of people that is for, and that's going to bring them to this practice. So, and then making yoga about community. So I see that a lot. And that's also my, part of my efforts as a Black yoga teacher is to not only, hey, come do this yoga, feel good and leave, but come and be a part of a community. So I try to encourage, like, that's even the reason why I include like self-reflection in my classes. I give my, participants a chance to share, because I don't want you to just come and feel good and leave, but I want you to come and learn about the person next to you, or to hear something from somebody else that you connect with. And maybe you'll have a conversation with them after the class, and then to build this, this community. And that's important, because culturally, as a Black people, we are about community. And that's been our saving grace going through slavery and all forms of oppression, is we've always leaned on each other. So yeah, those are just some examples.
This is me totally being childish, but for some reason I heard trap yoga and I started thinking about selling drugs and doing yoga.
Yeah.
But I know that's not what it is. But right. So can you share a story of someone whose relationship with yoga shifted once they saw themselves reflected in it? And apart from your experience, someone else who really had a deeper experience once they saw themselves reflected in it.
Yeah. With that question, the first thing I think about is Black men who have come to my classes. And So that's a demographic that is very hard to get to come to yoga. Because again, if we go back to what is the representation, white, female, young, and everything that a Black man is not, except for, we have obviously young Black men, but they're not white and they're not female. And they kind of view yoga as something that's like feminine, that's not for me. That's not what I don't belong here. And so somehow I have managed to attract Black men to my classes, which I think also has to do with collaborations that I've had with Black personal trainer, male personal trainers. And so they see a man and they're like, oh, okay, I can be here. Mm-hmm. And then the more of them that I've had in my classes, I take photos of my classes. And then when I advertise those photos, then they see more Black men and then they're like, oh, okay, we're allowed to be here. So I've talking to some of the Black men who have come to my classes, some have shared that, attend my class was like the first time that they've been in yoga. And then they started to develop like their own practice, continuing, or they see the benefit like, wow, they play sports, they lift weights, they do all this physical activity, but they never stretch. And then they see like, okay, this can help my performance, being more limber and stretching and all of that. Or they see how it helps them to relieve stress and they feel better. So it kind of shifts this perspective that maybe they had that this is a feminine thing, this is a woman thing, to no, this is for us too. And that's important to me because, also I teach yoga with a group, an organization that has conversations and events for Black men in the Pine Hills community. So for those who are from Orlando, Pine Hills is a predominantly Black neighborhood, a lot of impoverished areas in Pine Hills. And this organization, they try to create spaces for Black men to come together and have conversations and everything. And so I've done several yoga classes with this organization. And so I particularly love coming out with this group because Black men also Black women have a lot of like stressors that they face in this society. And we need this practice. And so it hurts my heart when Black men are just like, I'm not going to a yoga class. And so when I get them there, when I see them there, I get particularly excited because I'm like, yes, like if at any point in your life, at least this hour, you can just breathe and be yourself, Now,
I hope you don't have these brothers crying in this class now. I'm just kidding. So, we're going to move on here. And as we start to close, what would true equity in the yoga world look like to you? Not just in participation, but in ownership and visibility.
Yeah. So when I think of true equity, one that there's more representation, and not in a tokenized sense, that we're not looking at, okay, let's throw some Black people in this picture so we can look like, we're doing the inclusive thing. No, but that it being the norm that you have Black and brown people that are centered in this yoga space, and more access and opportunities for Black and brown people to have ownership in this world, in this yoga world. So owning studios and being able to lead out in certain, initiatives within the yoga community. So us no longer being the exception or being tokenized, but it just being normal to have this diversity. And that also includes people of different sizes, shapes, gender identity, sexual orientation. We need representation of all groups of people, because it's not just us that feels excluded in yoga spaces. It's also people who live in larger bodies, or people who maybe have certain disabilities that also don't feel welcomed as well. So representation is like the big thing. Ownership and representation and access. Increase access. We need studios in the hood. We need studios in Black communities and brown communities, Asian community. You know, we need more access. They can't all just be located in Winter Park, in Windermere. And for those who live in Orlando know what I'm talking about with those neighborhoods.
It's so funny how, so earlier today, I did another interview with a Black female group fitness trainer. And, you know, I wanted her to share her story because part of her story of getting into fitness was that she was significantly overweight, lost the weight. And she said for her, it was like a change of environment that kind of sparked her wanting to get healthier and change her life. But then, you know, she was also talking about like how that, you know, she was just being completely honest that, you know, they said that only like gyms only started coming up, you know, in certain neighborhoods, like Black neighborhoods, right? Like Planet only started being opened up in certain neighborhoods, or Blake opened up in certain neighborhoods, right? And so it's just crazy how this conversation just kind of flows into this one, right? Because again, there's like that idea of where there's no real access. And so, you know, there's just ways in which white America puts Black individuals into a box. Like, this is what you're expected to do. This is the type of food you're expected to eat.
Right.
This is the type of music you're supposed to listen to. And so I like, there's a particular scene from, I think it was Modern Family. And so there's the character, Ed O'Neill's character, he comes up to Sofia Vergara, who is his wife. And so he realizes that he has cameras being installed around his house the same day that his Black neighbor moves in next door, right? And so he was like, oh man, I need to go and deal with this because he's going to think I'm installing these cameras because he moved in. And she was like, oh, you're overthinking it. He's not going to think that. And so he says to her, he's like, babe, you have no idea what white men in this country go through. Right? It's so funny, right? So he goes to the guy and he was like, hey man, you know, I'm such and such. How you doing? And the Black guy said, let me stop you right there. He's like, look, I know you had the camera installation scheduled from like weeks ago. And, you know, I don't want you to think I'm thinking anything. He's like, look, I did my residency in Vermont, so this is not my first rodeo, right? And so he was like, so he introduces himself. He's like, hey, I'm Sean, by the way. And he was like, oh man, he tells him his name. So then his wife comes out. She's like, hey, how's it going? She's like, yeah. He's like, everything's good. There's no confusion. And he was like, by the way, this is, you know, he has an amazing African name. His name is Sean Badaway, right? And so he was like, he said, I said my name is Sean, by the way, right? So that he created this further problem. But it was just like, it just revealed how white America has these images of us in their head, and they operate on these images, right? And instead of, hey, who is this person? How can I get to know them? And how can I not put them in a box? So, Tammy, I'm really thankful that you made yourself available today to chime in on this conversation, because it is a necessary conversation. And this is a part of the show where we give the guests the opportunity to share with our listeners what they have coming up next, and then also where we can find you on social media.
Yes. So, again, my name is Tamara, but I also go by Tammy. So you can find me on Instagram, tammy.yoga, tammy.yoga, and things I have coming up. I have a yoga class coming up on May 31st, and this is my mindful movement yoga class. It's going to be held at the Grand Avenue Neighborhood Center, which is 800 Grand Street, Orlando, Florida 32805. You can find the registration link on either my Instagram link in bio or my website, which is tammyyogaflow.com, TAMMY yogaflow.com. And then I also have a collaboration with RTW Photography Studio on June 14th. So we're doing a yoga class as part of their Move, Nourish, and Thrive series. And that will be held in the Paramore neighborhood. So that's 520 North Paramore Avenue, Orlando, Florida. So both links are on my website and also link in bio on my Instagram. Both of those classes are being held in predominantly Black neighborhoods. So yeah, I'm all about my community, my people. So please come out to the class. It's going to be a great time. Yeah.
All right. And guys, if you are in the Orlando area, please stop on in. You're obviously more than welcome. So just go in there, learn what you can, but more than that, just experience what you can, right? And experience something deeper, something new. It's so vital for us as Black individuals to also try to have new experiences. So oftentimes we have too much of the same experiences, mundane experiences, and it's important for us to also have an expanded worldview and expanded experience. So definitely, if you can get out there, definitely visit Tammy and the rest of her crew there. All right, so Tammy, again, thank you so much for being here with us. And again, this is the I Choose Health podcast, where when you choose health, you're choosing yourself, you're choosing power, purpose, and possibility. And just remember that this is where the stories that empower others to succeed, empower others to live a healthier life resides. Again, this is the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Leslie. Thank you for watching.
And thank you for having me.
Peace.